Welcome to Conversations with Laurel, everyone. I am your host, Laurel.mchargue. And today we have a visitor who has not only quite a resume, but a page turning new novel. Bonnie Moore, welcome to my show.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here.
It is very good to have you here. You're coming to us from Utah?
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City, Utah. Well, we're going to talk about lots of things about you, and our listeners are going to get to know you. And we're going to talk about your book, Buried Bones, in a bit. But first, I just want people to know that you are a semi retired attorney, accountant, management consultant, and oh, by the way, Golden Girls Network founder. First of all, how can you be any kind of retired right now?
I try not to be. I am intentionally staying very busy because it keeps me young.
Yes. So, with all that in your background, um, and before we get to your novel, tell us a little about this Golden Girls Network. I looked into it, and of course, when you hear Golden Girls, you think of the show, right? Which is not what your Golden Girls Network is. Tell our listeners a little bit about what you've created.
I started it about, I think it was about 2015. The situation was I ended up divorced with a five-bedroom house in 2008 in the middle of the real estate recession.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep the house, and so I started getting roommates. And after 2 or 3 years, we were sitting around talking, and I had become acquainted with other people who were addressing the question of single women over a certain age who end up divorced and they don't have much money, or women who are trying to recreate their lives after divorce, usually. And so we came up with this idea of Golden Girls Network, which was a matching service, women who needed a place to live and women who had spare bedrooms. And so I developed a website. I got a whole lot of publicity. The day that we launched the website, we were on the front page of the style section of the Washington Post. Um, and it was a great idea. I had and I did a lot to kind of get it going, but it required a lot of upfront financing. And I finally, when I ended up retiring from my job in 2017, I could not afford to support it anymore. So I
Wow.
ended up selling the software to a woman in Canada who's still running it in Canada. So, and I also wrote the book, How to Start a Golden Girls Home, which is still selling. It's been selling for 10 years now.
That
So
is fabulous.
the whole idea and living together as older people has complexities because you have very different lifestyles that come together. And so that's what the book is all about. It's not necessarily the how to live with a roommate, it's how to get along with somebody else your same age.
Right, right. I did watch a video of an interview that you did about the Golden Girls network, and it was fascinating. And boy, the things that you covered about, how again, how you find appropriate matches, so to speak, for
Yes,
roommates, and absolutely such an amazing idea for more mature women,
yes.
right? Yeah, and we are all getting older. Well, all right, let's get into Hidden Bones. And by the way, what a great cover. Oh my gosh. Who did the cover?
Actually, it was a college student, a graphics art student. She was
Wow.
the daughter of a friend of mine.
Oh, absolutely.
I went through four different graphic art situations, didn't like what anybody was doing, and finally went to her, and I love it too. The the um, the rose signifies that there was romance involved in her death.
Yeah.
That's what that's all about.
All right. Well, I mean, they say you can't judge a book by a cover, but I did in this case, and I'm like, I want to read. I definitely want to read that book. So this is a cozy murder mystery romance, and explain to us, some of our listeners who might not understand what cozy means in a sense of, a book that has murder and romance in it.
A cozy mystery is one that doesn't have direct somebody's getting killed right there in the chapters. The person usually has already died. Another requirement is there's no explicit sex. So it's a soft mystery, if you will. And there's a wide range of books that are called cozy mysteries. Some of them are fun. Some of them are the little old lady with the candy store and her cat figures out the mystery. And some of them are more traditional mysteries. But if you don't have a murder right in the story, if you don't have explicit sex, if you don't have strong language, um, pretty much you can qualify as a cozy mystery.
Yeah. And your protagonist in this case is a 75-year-old woman, right?
Yes,
Looking
um,
for,
and
go
she's
ahead.
very live and proactive.
Yes, absolutely. She is a fabulous character. So let me ask you, first of all, why now? Because this is your debut novel, yes?
Yes,
Why now? Why now? And how? How did you accomplish such a feat now? Why did you have to write this now?
I've always been interested in writing. I've always kind of had that dream,
Yeah.
and I was always too busy earning a living and raising kids and all that kind of stuff. I actually wrote a manuscript about 20 years ago that didn't go anywhere. And I still have the manuscript and I think it's a good story and I may edit it and do it. But um, it's always been something that interested me and I've taken classes in writing. When I lived in DC, there's a place in Bethesda called the Writers Center that I took many classes there. And I actually wrote another uh, I wrote another the novel that I wrote 20 years ago. I started in a class at the Writers Center.
Okay.
Um, I retired to Utah 8 years ago because my son and his family live here, and I started taking writing classes. Of course,
Good. Yeah.
they have a wonderful program up at the University of Utah, an extension program, and I took a class called How to Write a Murder Mystery. And so we all had to have a project to work on. And so somebody had told me about this pioneer cabin that his family inherited not too long before that. And I says, well, all right, here's a cabin, here's a setting. Let me see if I can figure out a mystery around that. So that's how it started. Um, and the class was just before COVID.
Yeah.
So when the class was over, I continued writing because this became my COVID project. And it took me 5 years because the first draft was awful. And um, and I'm perfectly willing to admit it. I don't even want to go back and read it. It was so bad. But I hired an editor and we went through 3 different sessions. I had somebody else critique it and he tossed out some things. And I worked on it for 5 years. I read a lot of books about writing style and critiquing and this and that. And so I finally decided it was done and got it published.
Yes, you did. And I was going to ask you how you where did you learn to use dramatic irony in here? And for those listening, dramatic irony is where the reader, the audience knows more than the characters do. Is that something that was covered in your classes? Do you remember?
I
Was that
remember,
even a choice?
I think I read something about that in one of these multiple books that I have on my bookshelf back here and on my Kindle. lots and lots of books about how to write. And I think that was one of the um, choices. And
Yes.
I thought that was rather interesting. And I had to figure out how to get the victim's voice in there. And so that's how I developed it. I had her diary and segments of her diary throughout the book, telling what led up to her murder. But of course, she doesn't know who murdered her.
Right, right, right. You also have red herrings flapping about and taking us in different directions too. And is that something that you learned in your class? You know, how to use,
Well,
you
we
know.
had to have we ended up with four suspects. You know, so I had to keep the reader guessing.
Yes, and you absolutely did. I was guessing all the way to the end. There were a couple places where I was thinking, maybe, or this seems like, or
Oh,
it
that's
just.
exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, no, and that's what happened with me. I mean, it and one of your reviews says something about it's a slow roll, and I just wanted to keep rolling with it. I mean, because it grabbed me and kept me going and kept me guessing. So it was
Oh,
really, really
marvelous. I'm
wonderful.
so
Yeah.
pleased to hear that.
Well, I was going to ask you if you were a planner or a pantser, like do you write by the seat of your pants, or it sounds like you planned this, but I'm wondering what your process was for planning this. I mean, like some people don't know, some people who write murder mysteries don't know who done it until they get almost near the end of their writing. Like, so how much did you plan and how much did you know about the who done it? And don't tell us who done it, but how much did you know about that? Or was that a surprise?
um,
So you
I think
planned.
I think that was developed. You know, I worked on the plot and added characters now and then, so things changed. I started out as a pantser, writing that, just sit down and write.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning, and I'm working on the second book right now. I've got about 100 pages of the first draft done. But what I've what I'm developing as my style, and this seems to work for me, is I will have an idea, I'll write 3 or 4 chapters, I'll get stuck. And I know where I want to go, generally speaking, but I don't know how to get there yet.
Yeah.
So on the second book, that's exactly what I did is I wrote about 4 or 5 chapters, and then I had to stop and outline another 4 chapters, and I've written those now. And I'm ready to outline another 3 or 4 chapters. Now, I'm concentrating on the first 50 pages because that's where you have to grab your readers. I'm concentrating on developing the characters so that people like the characters,
Yeah.
at least some of them.
Yeah.
And so I've got character development, and I'm building the crisis. So I'm there at the crisis, and I'm ready to do the next 4 chapters. And of course, I know where I'm going to go with this. I just haven't done it yet.
Okay.
So I think I'm a combination of pantser and plotter.
Yep.
I have to kind of because what I discover is that I sit down and write, and these characters will just go off on their own and do things I wasn't expecting.
Yes, the surprises that they bring to us, aren't they wonderful?
Oh, yes. I've got I've got a couple of characters in chapter 2 that have said things I just had no idea they were going to say. And that takes it off in a different direction. And so I can't outline the whole thing because I don't know what this character is going to do.
No,
So I'll give them
uh,
4 chapters at a time.
I
So
am totally with you on that. I think that's wonderful, and that's when you let your creative muses speak through you. It's just great. So your attorney background really shows through in this book. Now, when I was younger, Perry Mason I read all the Nancy Drew books. Perry Mason, I was drawn to, and I absolutely loved watching his shows. And how he developed things and all that. Who were your murder mystery inspirations, or who are they? What did you watch when you were younger?
Well, unlike you, I read Nancy Drew. Didn't we all?
Oh
Back
no, yeah, I
in,
did. Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And Perry Mason, we both come from the same generation.
yeah, yeah.
Since I've been interested in mysteries, of course, I've read Agatha Christie and P.D. James. I like P.D. James and I like Dorothy Sayers. So these are the traditional mystery writers from 50 years ago. Um, what I've been doing when I really like a story, a mystery particular, is I go back and I outline it and I try to figure out how it was developed. So I have outlined any number of mysteries. And well, in fact, even Stephen King wrote a detective series. There were three books that I liked. I normally don't like Stephen King, but his three mysteries, it's a series, were good, and I couldn't put them down. Obviously, it is Stephen King style.
Yeah,
Um, but I went back and outlined them, and I could see how he developed the characters and when the clues came in and how he worked with those clues. Um, and his main character is a detective, a retired detective. Um, so that was very instructive. I found it to be very instructive to go back and outline books that I really like because I learned so much from them.
that's fascinating. You have done the homework. I mean, holy mackerel. One of the tips I always give to new writers is, if you want to improve your writing, read, read. And when you read something that thrills you or makes you cry or makes you angry or surprises you, study how that happened, how that got that emotion in you. Because as writers, that's what we want to do. We want to grab our readers and make them feel something. And so boy, you've really done the homework. Brava.
Well,
Uh,
it also um, cements the story in your mind, and when I outline them, it's like a short paragraph on each chapter. I mean, that's what I've done with Buried Bones, for instance. I went back at the end and outlined it that way, a short paragraph on each chapter. I identified when the clues came in and what action happened in each chapter. Um, and it's very useful to see how that works. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
uh, to me, that has been the best education
Yeah.
is to find a good book. Like right now, one of the things I'm doing is I'm reading books that have won the Pulitzer Prize. Not all of them, the ones that I like. But if I outline them, I can see what the author has done, and I'm looking for the things that have caught the attention of critics and readers.
You are the first person I've had a visit with who's said that that's what you do in order to learn, in order to write better. I haven't even done that. I mean, like I said, I stop and I read analytically now. I have for quite a while. But yeah, that you're going above and beyond, and that is a testament to, I think, all your training and your background. Um, your characters, again, so believable, so real. I loved particularly your Grammy character, her feelings of invisibility, her abrupt mood changes. I feel like she was so relatable in so many ways. Talk a little bit about invisibility for, I think maybe for older women in particular. Is this something that you've ever experienced? I'm starting to.
Yes, something seems to shift when a woman becomes 60, maybe 70, something like that. I noticed it because I've always had, attention, um, professionally, particularly, and I reached a certain age and people stopped paying attention to me.
Mm.
Um, and what I had to say, or the importance of what I had to say. Um, it's I think it's really something out there that somehow women get dismissed at a certain age.
Women and not men.
I think so. That's
I think so
that's
too.
my opinion, but I haven't experienced what men experience.
Yeah. I guess it's a cultural thing.
Hmm.
Do you think? I mean, so what do we do? What do we do besides say, look at me?
Well, you have to do it for yourself. You have to make sure that you still get the attention that you want or need, or if you have something important to say, that people listen to you.
Yeah.
You don't fade into the background.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that too. So, which is why we write and we keep writing and we do things like this, which is I think wonderful. Um, Maggie has, your main character, has a sixth sense. And at one point, she tells her cozy love interest, she calls herself a know-it-all mystic. And there are some scenes in there that have kind of a spiritual mystic element to them. Um, is this you? Have you had experiences like this?
um, I've a number of years ago, I had what I would consider a mystical experience. Yes, I'm not real strong into all of that stuff, but it something that came on me just very suddenly, and you know, I felt like I was visited by a ghost, and it was really jarring. Um, but I also the reason I put that in there is I think that women are much more intuitive than men. And so this was taking her intuition to the next level, if you will. She I she's someone who really feels and experiences her victims.
Yeah,
And it that's the strength of her ability to fight for their cause. And so this particular vision was more than she'd ever had before. One of the things that she says is she's never actually seen the ghost before. And it was only
yeah,
one time, but she felt the ghost. She
yeah,
felt the vibes of her victim.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that I loved that element. It deepened her as a character. And again, I think a lot of us out here in the creative world have more than five senses that we're dealing with oftentimes.
Yeah.
Or
Um, I I don't know what the mystical world is, and it's not something I want to focus on, but I think there's more than what we know. That's kind of my attitude.
absolutely. And I've had this conversation with someone before. When we think about what we know, what do we know? We know things through our senses, right? Our
Mhm.
five senses. And we didn't know about germs until we could see them. So I just think our senses are so limited, and there's so much we have not yet discovered because of our limited senses. I'm fascinated by what we don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, let's see what else. Who who helped you? Do you have shout outs for Buried Bones?
Well, my editor number one,
Yeah.
more than anything else, she was very patient and very effective.
Yeah.
Um, the and of course the instructor in the class, who is a well-known writer here in Utah, um, got me started. Um, just the fact that we had to have a class project.
Mhm.
And I kind of liked the project and I decided to stay with it. Um, So, I mean, it was a 5 year journey. So, and I also have to acknowledge all those people who told me right to my face that the first draft was awful and they couldn't even read it. But I do have one friend who read the first draft and the second draft and the third draft, and she kept loving it. And so I kept writing for her.
Good, good. And you know what? We writers, we need feedback that's honest, right? We don't need people telling us that everything we write is perfect because that's not helpful. I'm on year five, maybe six of a novel that I thought I had finished a long time ago, and then all of a sudden realized, oh, I wrote it in past tense. I need to write it in present tense. And so I'm
Yeah.
in this year five, six, working on my, I don't know, umpteenth draft, and it's going to be much better. And in the process of letting it wait and not being as impatient as I was with my first books, getting them out there, it's going to be a much better product. So, yeah, as far as taking feedback, using what resonates with you, you don't have to listen to everything. You don't have to do everything that people suggest. But yeah, it's good to get that feedback because again, once you put this out into the world, buried bones are no longer yours. They're mine, and they're everyone who reads
Oh,
about them.
I keep coming up with changes I want to make to that, and I can't anymore. So I have to make sure the second one has everything before I put it out, which will never happen. You know that.
No, I know. So Buried Bones by Bonnie Moore is a Maggie Anderson mystery. And obviously you've already told us that you're well into Maggie's next adventure. Will it be a murder mystery as well?
It is. It's the legal issue that I'm dealing with is in the realm of self-defense.
Oh,
Um, I have someone who murdered someone, but it falls under the legal category of defense. It's called defense of others, and it's in the same category of self-defense. So she is defending that person. And, um, the courts are very, very particular about self-defense claims.
okay.
So, but it's a situation where the accused person was really a hero, but he's
Oh.
being treated very badly by the system.
As is the person who is accused wrongly in this
Buried
book.
bones. He
Yeah,
was innocent. There was no evidence against him, but the town wanted to convict him on prejudice.
yeah, yeah.
So actually, to take that to the next step, all of the situations that Maggie's going to get involved with are going to be situations where people run into these kinds of problems with the law and they don't know how to deal with it. Um, either it wrongly accused, which is what the first one was. The second one is this self-defense claim where the person actually was a hero, but he's being treated like um, a terrible murderer um, because he went to the defense of somebody who was about to be severely injured.
Mm.
And I don't know what the third one is going to be, but they're going to be situations, and you don't see these very often in murder mysteries. Murder mysteries almost always are, a detective or somebody looking for somebody who killed somebody.
Mhm.
And finding that person and capturing them is the plot.
Right.
Um, so I'm making this a little bit different. Don't know if it's going to be accepted by the reading public, but I think these are stories that need to be told because so often people get caught up in these legal situations and the law is so harsh on people that it destroys who they are,
Yeah, yeah.
especially if they're innocent or if they have a valid legal defense. So, um, so she's going to be a little bit like Jessica Fletcher, except that she's going to be finding situations where people are in these situations and she helps them out.
Yeah, your legal background obviously helps you make these so real and so believable. Ultimately, I felt like Buried Bones was a story of redemption.
Mhm.
Am I right on that?
Yeah, there is that element also. There's lots of little elements in there.
Lots of elements there are, yeah.
Um, the redemption aspect is that Maggie, in her professional job, she ran into a situation where one of her innocent suspects was brutally murdered in a vigilante um, situation, and she felt guilty about it. She ended up resigning from her job and retiring, and she was never going to get involved again.
Yeah.
And so suddenly she gets back involved, and so she starts out with this lack of confidence. And the idea is that she is gaining her confidence back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you did that absolutely beautifully. Um, what advice would you give to our potential new authors out there?
Um,
Or any final words you want to let our
I,
listeners
I,
know?
I think it takes a lot of courage to put a book out there. Um, the but I would also encourage people to read a lot in terms of there are a whole lot of good books out there about how to write, and many of them repeat themselves, but you can glean information from each one of those. I've actually developed some um, how to write a book's information where I've taken bits and pieces of these books that I really like, and so this is my blueprint now.
Okay. Do you have any favorites?
The books that I've read.
Right? On
Um,
writing?
what one of my favorite thoughts, or that's not the right. There's there's a book titled um, "How to Save the Cat."
Oh yeah,
The
yeah,
Save
yes,
the Cat
yes, yes.
idea.
Yeah. Save the Cat writes a novel.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
and I use that. And by the way, this is just um, a tidbit. I'm going to have a cat in every one of my books.
Oh,
Did you notice the cat in Buried Bones?
yeah, I did.
Yes, we
I
saved the
did.
cat
I
in
did.
Buried Bones.
I have a cat in my novel too.
So I just put a cat in the second novel. So we're going to save a cat.
We are going
Um,
to, you have
I
to save the cat.
I thought the way that was presented, it's very similar information to some of the other books about outlining and developing conflict and all those kinds of things. But the way it's presented is wonderful. I love it. Um, so
Did you Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird is one of my favorites. If you haven't read that one yet, I've read it a couple times already.
what was it again?
Bird by Bird.
I haven't heard of that, but I have to make
And
a note of
yep,
it.
Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird, absolutely fabulous because it's very honest about publishing and writing, and
Uh-huh.
it's autobiographical and it's wonderful. Stephen King has a book on writing. I don't know if you read
I
that
think I
one, but
have that one.
that one's great too.
Yes,
Surprising,
I
by
probably
Stephen King.
have 50 of them.
There are a lot of really great ones. Well, Bonnie Moore, author of Buried Bones, book one of the Maggie Anderson mystery. Where can people follow you, find your work?
I have a website. It's called bonniemorebooks.com.
Okay.
Um, I'm on Facebook. Um, and we're developing promotional things all the time.
Okay. All right. I will have links below to you and your work. And Bonnie, thank you so much for being brave and courageous and using what you know and bringing your incredible expertise to this debut novel, and there will be more to come, which was very exciting. And again, this is a book that I think a lot of people can relate to. You can relate to the characters, and it'll draw you in and make you really question a lot of different things. So, again, thank you for being here, listeners out there. Get Bunny's book, link below. And if you want to have a conversation with me, you don't have to be an author. If you would like to have a conversation with me, email me. My email address is below. Bonnie, thanks again, and keep Maggie busy.
I will, and thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. All
You're very welcome. It was a delight and a delight to have you here. And listeners out there, we'll see you next time. Bye.
right, take care.